Hello students, in today's class we will be talking about a new topic which is outbreeding devices. 85% of the angiosperm that you see around is hermaphrodite. What does that mean? It means that they have the stamen and carpel, both are present within the same flower. That means the chances of self-pollination is very high. However, the plant still chooses for cross-pollination. So why? What is the reason why the plant it goes for a cross-pollination more compared to the self-pollination? And that is when the outbreeding devices comes in. So outbreeding devices are the different mechanisms that are developed by the plant to avoid the self-pollination and encourage cross-pollination. So outbreeding devices are different mechanisms that are developed by plant to avoid, remember, to avoid self-pollination and encourage cross. Okay. Now why the plant they try to avoid self-pollination? Inbreeding depression. What do you mean by inbreeding depression? That is the reduction in biological fitness. Okay. And what does that biological fitness means? There is a decrease in the growth, fertility and survival. So that means the inbreeding depression. Another reason is that there is a reduction in genetic variation since the pollination occurs within the same flower. So the genetic diversity decreases. Okay, so that is the reason why the plant it avoids the self-pollination. Now why the plant prefers or encourage cross-pollination? So one reason is that just the opposite, it improves the genetic diversity. Okay, so it increases the genetic diversity, also adaptability to the changing. Because the genetic diversity has increased, it also improves its adaptability to the changing environmental conditions, and overall it helps in the process of evolution. So with evolution, cross pollination is always beneficial. So that is why the plant always try to avoid self pollination and prefers a cross pollination. So for that, plant has different mechanism, different strategies, and that is how the outbreeding devices is grouped into 4 different ways that we'll talk about. So now there are 4 different types of outbreeding devices. First is dichogamy, next is herkogamy, third is self, and the last one is uni. So now we'll move to the 4 different type of outbreeding devices mechanisms through which the plant it tries to avoid the self pollination and go for the cross pollination. So these 4 are, first is dichogamy, next is herkogamy, third is self-incompatibility, and the last one is unisexuality. So first we'll talk about dichogamy is also called as temporal separation. What does that mean? It means that here the stamen and the carpel they mature at different time intervals. So this will prevent the self-pollination. How? Here the stamen and carpel they mature at different time intervals. It is of 2 types, Protandry and Protogyny. Pro means before, Andry means androecium. Here the stamen, the anther dehiscence take place before the stigma becomes receptive. Understood? So temporal separation, stamen and carpel will mature at different time intervals. They are of 2 types, Protandry and Protogyny. Protandry, pro means before. So here the anther dehiscence will take place before the stigma becomes receptive within the same flower. Okay. So here this will prevent autogamy. What was autogamy? When the pollination take place within the flower. Okay. So this will prevent autogamy, but dichogamy will still happen. That is the pollination between 2 different flowers within the same plant. Okay, makes sense, right? Because anther dehiscence is taking place before the stigma becomes receptive within the flower. But here in dichogamy, there are 2 different flowers within the same plant. So that anther still can land to the different flower but within the same plant. So dichogamy will occur. Okay, so here the examples are sunflower and salvia. Okay, we'll move to protogyny. So what is protogyny? Here pro means before, gyne means gynoecium. So here the stigma becomes receptive before the anther dehiscence take place within the flower. Okay, so here also the autogamy will be prevented, but geitonogamy will still happen. So this will be same for protogyny as well. Okay, the examples are mango and avocado. Okay, now we'll talk about herkogamy, which is also called as spatial separation. What does that mean? It means that here the stamen and the carpel, they both mature at the same time. However, both are positioned at different levels. Okay, so here the maturity is at the same interval, same time, but they are at different positions. Okay, so that is called as herkogamy. Different positions means might possible that your stigma, that your carpel is at a higher level compared to the stamen. So even if the anther dehiscence take place, the pollens within the same flower, it won't be able to reach the stigma. Okay. Second, possible that there is a physical barrier between the stamen and carpel. Okay, so there can be a physical barrier, or possible that both the stamen and the carpel, they are at two different heights. Okay, so here this happens in hibiscus and calla. Okay, so here also the autogamy will be prevented, but geitonogamy will still occur, right? Because pollination can still happen between the two different flowers of the same plant. So autogamy will be prevented, but geitonogamy will still occur. Next, we'll talk about the self-incompatibility. So what is self-incompatibility? This is very important, like most of the questions from outbreeding will be asked from self-incompatibility. Okay, so self-incompatibility is the most effective mechanism, and it is a genetically controlled mechanism by a plant. Okay, it is the so self-incompatibility is a genetically controlled mechanism by the plant, where it avoids the self-pollination and goes for the cross-pollination. So in self-incompatibility, even if the pollen, it reaches the stigma of the same plant, still the fertilization will not occur. Okay, so and what is the reason is that the plants, they have a genetic recognition mechanism. So the plants, they have a genetic recognition mechanism where they reject pollen from same plant and it accepts the pollen from different. So here, because the plants, they have a genetic recognition mechanism, they will reject the pollen from same plant and they will accept the pollen from different plant. So how they are going to reject the pollen from the same plant? Either the pollen germination will not occur or the pollen tube growth will be blocked. So in such case, autogamy and geitonogamy both are prevented. Okay, so this is a true example where the plant will go for cross. Okay, so this is a very effective technique which is employed by the plant to go for cross pollination. Here the examples are brassica and petunia. Okay, next we'll talk about unisexuality. So unisexuality means when the male and the female flowers are separate. It is of two types, monoecious and dioecious. What is monoecious means? When the male and the female flowers are present within the same plant, monoecious. Dioecious, when the male and the female flowers are present on two different plants. So since in dioecious the male and female flowers are present on the two different plants, so this is a true example of cross pollination. Why I am saying this? Because in monoecious the autogamy situation will be prevented for sure, because it is occurring between the two different flowers within the same plant. So autogamy is prevented, but geitonogamy will still happen. However, in dioecious condition, because it is present the male and female flowers on the different plant, autogamy, geitonogamy both will be prevented. Now the examples are maize for monoecious and papaya, date palm for dioecious. So let's revise once again. So what is outbreeding devices? These are the different strategies which are developed by the plant to avoid self-pollination and encourage cross-pollination. The plant has 4 different strategies to encourage cross-pollination. The first one is dichogamy, is the temporal separation. That is, the stamen and the carpel, they mature at 2 different time intervals. Okay, then the next is herkogamy, that is the spatial separation. The stamen and the carpel, they mature at the same time, but they are positioned at different heights. So again, there is a physical barrier between the stamen and carpel. So that is herkogamy. Next is self-incompatibility, which is the most effective genetically controlled mechanism, where the plant, it has a genetic recognition mechanism through which it avoids the self-pollination, the pollen from the same plant, and it accepts the pollen from the different plant. And then the last one is the unisexuality, which means when the male and the female flowers are separate. It is again of 2 types, monoecious and dioecious. When the male and the female flowers are present within the same plant, monoecious, and when they are present on the 2 different plants, it is dioecious. So out of all, the 2 important strategies, the one is self-incompatibility and the dioecious nature, they both are the true methods that promote the cross-pollination. The rest, there is still a chance for Dichogamy. Okay, so if you like my video, please like, share and subscribe.